Section 1. You will hear a conversation about accommodation rules. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 3. You will see there is an example that has been done for you. On this occasion only, the conversation relating to this will be played first. Good morning, everyone. I'm your accommodation advisor. Well, firstly, welcome to Thomas House, which is one of the most popular accommodations in our university. I will give you an introduction about the house and answer your questions. The name of the house is Thomas House, so Thomas House has been chosen. Now we shall begin. You should answer the questions as you listen, because you will not hear the recording a second time. Listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 3. Good morning, everyone. I'm your accommodation advisor. Well, firstly, welcome to Thomas House, which is one of the most popular accommodations in our university. I will give you an introduction about the house and answer your questions. As you know, the building was constructed in the middle of the 18th century and was used by the family of Thomas. That's, of course, how the house and university got its name. We repaired it and added some new and modern facilities last year.
Excuse me, advisor?
Yes?
What kind of facilities are there in Thomas House?
There are 3 floors. A front hall and a dining room are on the ground floor.
Does the house have a garden?
Of course.
And a garage?
No, we don't provide parking lot to students.
Okay.
A small gym with some new equipment is on the 2nd floor.
Does it have a computer room?
No, I mean a leisure room on the 2nd floor, and you can find a comfortable lounge with a big balcony on the same floor.
How about bedroom and bathroom?
They are both on the top.
How many students are there in one flat?
4 to 6.
I wonder if I have to share a bathroom with others.
No, we provide every student a bedroom and a bathroom.
Great.
Now, look at questions 4 to 10. Now listen carefully and answer questions 4 to 10. There are some rules in Thomas House. Firstly, smoking is not allowed in both your bedroom and the bathroom.
Does the house have a smoking section?
No, you can smoke on the balcony or outside the house.
Advisor, is there a laundry in the house?
Of course, laundry room is located on the right corner of the 2nd floor.
Sure.
But please do not use it after 11 o'clock.
Is it free to us?
In fact, you don't need to pay any bills which are included in your accommodation fee, but you have to pay laundry fee.
How much?
We offer 2 coin-operated washing machines. The large one is £2.50 and the small one is £1.60.
If the lounge has a time restriction?
Definitely. We ask all students to keep quiet and do not make noise after 11 o'clock.
We know there is a backyard in the house.
Yes.
if we can park our car there?
No, we do not allow parking in our yard.
Okay. Could we invite some friends to hold a party in the garden or lounge?
We only allow party on weekends.
Fine.
The last rule is to pay attention to the opening time of the front hall. The door is locked at 11 p.m. and opened again at 6 a.m. in the next morning. Remember to take the front door key when you go out early or come back late.
How could we get the front door key?
You can go to Residence Office building and get your key in room 101.
Sure.
Well, any questions? This is the end of section 1. You now have half a minute to check your answers. Now turn to section 2.
Section 2. Good morning, everyone. I'm John Smith, the General Practitioner of London Fields Medical Centre, and I'm very glad to give you a brief introduction about our practice and some suggestions about how to see a doctor here. Our receptionists are usually the first point of contact and are here to help you. They have a lot of information to hand, and in most cases will be able to help you with your inquiry, ensuring you see the most appropriate clinician. Okay, right. Well, the first thing to do is to register. We can only accept new patients who live in our practice catchment area. To register with us, you will need 2 proofs of address, such as bank statements or tenancy agreements, plus 1 form of ID, such as passport or driver's license. If you are foreign nationals, then you'll have to register as a temporary visitor. Then, fill in this form. It's a medical history form. You have to give details of any illnesses you have had. Then, you also need to write down if you've got any allergies. Okay? This as well as that. We need to know if you've had any operations. And, last of all, you have to give full details of current medication you may be on. This as well as that. You need to fill in this registration card. This is for your personal details. That's your full name, address, and telephone numbers. Okay? And we also need to make an appointment for you to see the doctor for a new patient health check. It'll just take about 15 minutes, that's all. It's just a basic checkup, really. Before the speaker goes on with his introduction, look at questions 15 to 20. Now listen to the continued talk and answer questions 15 to 20 by choosing the appropriate letters. Okay then, let me tell you something about the health centre. We have 5 GPs here, general practitioners. We also have a practice nurse who looks after minor injuries. She can also administer some treatments. We also have a chiropodist. That's a foot specialist. She's private, which means you have to pay for the service, unless you're over 65. If you want to see a doctor, you have to make an appointment first. Please call our main switchboard number on 0207 923 8100 to book an appointment at either our main practice or one of our branch surgeries. You can also email for an appointment on londonfieldsmedical@nhs.net. Urgent cases are seen on the day. If your condition is non-urgent, you can expect to see a GP within 2 working days, though you may have to wait longer if you want to see a particular GP. If it's an emergency, you'd better come straight here to the centre. One of the doctors can usually see you. Or you can go to the emergency department at the hospital in town. If you are very sick, you can ask for a home visit as well. On Friday afternoons, we have an open surgery, which means you can come along and just wait to see a doctor. But you may have to wait for several hours, so it's much better to make an appointment and come at the specified time. Usually, when you see a doctor, you'll be given a prescription for medicine which you need to take, or you can choose to go to a pharmacist in a chemist's shop. If the doctor decides that you will need the medication for a long time, you will be given a repeat prescription form. This allows you to get a further supply without seeing the doctor again. You simply leave the repeat form here a few days before you need it. Then you pick up the medication at the chemist's. Oh, you may wonder how much this all costs. Well, there is no charge for seeing a doctor. You can make an appointment any time to see one of our doctors, and it will not cost you anything for the consultation. However, you need to pay for the prescription, and the cost varies with the medicine, but it's usually just a few pounds. Nevertheless, in some situations, such as pregnancy, the prescription is then free. All right, do you have any other questions? That is the end of section 2. You will have half a minute to check your answers. Now turn to section 3. In a moment, you are going to hear a conversation between a professor and his student Alicia. As you listen, answer questions 21 to 30. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 30. Now, listen carefully to the conversation and answer questions 21 to 30.
Section 3. You will hear a tutor and 2 students discussing the crop rice. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 24. Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 24.
Good morning, everyone. So, following on from our tutorial on European agriculture last week, Daisy and Eric are going to talk about the most commonly grown crop in Asia, which is, of course, rice. Eric, can you tell us what you've been working on?
Yeah, sure. We've been looking at the role of rice in a number of countries, how it's grown, ways of increasing production. As I'm sure you know, rice is the staple diet throughout Asia and, in fact, 90% of the world's rice is grown and eaten there. Daisy's got some background on that.
Well, rice was originally a wild plant which started out in the tropical regions of Asia. But there are literally hundreds of varieties today, and each with different qualities. For instance, one will survive floods, while another will grow in relatively dry conditions. A third has a really lovely smell. But wherever it grows, rice needs a lot of water.
What do you mean by a lot?
Well, it takes about 5,000 litres to get a kilogram of rice. This can be supplied either naturally or by irrigation. And as most rice-growing countries suffer from unpredictable weather, including drought, water management really is the key.
Research has become so important now that each rice-growing country in Asia has its own research institute. Whether we're talking about Japan, China or Bangladesh, and they're all coordinated by a group in the Philippines called the International Rice Research Institute.
Interesting.
Bangladesh, for instance, has been successfully using different rice varieties and fertilizers for 30 years. But because it's such a flat delta country, it's very difficult for the water to drain away after the monsoon season. So they need to find special rice crops that can survive the floods. And with global warming, the situation is more urgent than ever.
Before you hear the rest of the discussion, you have some time to look at questions 25 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 25 to 30.
Now I'd like to move on to our comparative study. As you can imagine, China is the world's biggest rice-producing country. Collectively, the Chinese people probably eat more than 3 billion bowls of rice every day.
Quite a statistic.
And of course, rice plays an important cultural role too.
We then compared China to Thailand. You know, even though Thailand only has about 64 million people, it's the world's #1 exporter of rice. Not China, as you might imagine.
Is that so?
Yes, they send their rice everywhere, in particular to Europe, as well as Africa and the Middle East. Apparently, the fact that jasmine rice is growing in popularity is one reason why Thailand's rice export industry is doing so well. People want something a bit different.
And of course, Thailand is well suited to rice growing. Good climatic conditions and lots of fresh water.
Going back to China for a minute, we should mention that at the Rice Research Institute in Huangzhou, they're working on ways of improving rice yields using less water.
By yields, you mean the amount they can grow?
Yes, they're trying to find ways to get more rice from less land, improve the taste, but also have other things in it besides carbohydrates, so that it's healthier, better for you.
Good idea, considering it's the staple food.
And then you've got Japan, which is totally self-sufficient when it comes to rice. This is basically because they have a high tariff on imported rice, so everyone buys the homegrown product, and they don't export much.
Yes, but, you know, even though rice is a kind of sacred crop there, consumption is only half what it was in the 1960s. This trend isn't evident in Thailand or China.
Interesting that you mentioned how rice is almost sacred in Japan, because I believe in Thailand it also plays an important cultural role.
Absolutely. They have the royal ploughing ceremony every year, which the king always attends, and he actually scatters a new stock of seed to the farmers, who pour into Bangkok for the event.
What about the global interest in organic farming? Is there such a thing as organically grown rice?
Yes, indeed. And the Japanese are getting quite a taste for it, apparently. There's an experimental farm near the city of Akita in the Japanese rice belt, famous for its sake, by the way, which has pioneered organic rice production. and now it's sold all across the country. It's a bit like the recent popularity of jasmine rice in Thailand, but that's for the export market, of course.
Interesting how attitudes change, isn't it?
That is the end of section 3. You now have half a minute to check your answers. Now turn to section 4.
Section 4. You will hear a lecture's introduction to Insect Biology 101. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now, listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
Good afternoon and welcome to Insect Biology 101. I'd like to begin this course with a few remarks about good insects and bad ones. Bugs are all around us, and that's both a benefit and an annoyance, sometimes maybe even serious harm. First, let's talk about the good things that insects do for us. Probably the most important insect for humans, and maybe for all other life, is the bee. Bees help plants in the process of pollination, and thus are necessary to most flowers and fruit-producing trees. That is, they carry pollen from male flowers to female. If it weren't for bees, we'd have very few food plants and no fruit either. In fact, there would be no we. No less a thinker than Albert Einstein pointed out that, without bees, humanity would be dead within a year or less. We'd starve. It's that simple. That should maybe make us just a little humble. A little less dramatic is the fact that bees also make the honey we eat. Moreover, they produce beeswax, which is useful in candles and is also used as a first-rate furniture polish. Sure, these may not be vital to our lives, but they can serve as reminders of how important bees are. That's a point I keep coming back to in this course. Though, in all fairness, I should point out that butterflies aid in pollination as well as bees. Now, here in Michigan, what's the worst part of summer? Yep, that's right, mosquitoes. But I'm talking about helpful insects, right? So let's look at the dragonfly first. If there were no dragonflies, there would be even more mosquitoes. Dragonflies mainly eat mosquitoes and also a few other insects. Yes, that's right. They don't just fly around, and they also help to eliminate harmful insects. So the next time you see a dragonfly, don't you dare kill it. Now, let's talk a little about those harmful insects. Take the mosquitoes I just mentioned as an example. Not so many years ago, mosquitoes here in America weren't just annoying, some were even deadly. They carried malaria and yellow fever. My own ancestor, the Confederate General John Bell Hood, lived through the worst battles of Civil War, only to die at age 38 from yellow fever. A pest, not a bullet. Well, besides the mosquitoes, in summer there is also a kind of insect that never seems tired. Right, that is the fly. Before I go on talking, I must mention an African fly called the tsetse fly, which feeds on blood and can cause serious diseases in the people and animals that it bites. Besides, it is still a bearer of sleeping sickness, which affects around 300,000 people every year in Africa, and can be treated only with toxic drugs that are hard to administer. Worse still, the drugs sometimes don't work. Other insects, of course, destroy food crops. In China, for instance, locusts continue to be a danger to the harvest in some areas. Less important, but still annoying, moths eat people's clothes and dust mites slowly destroy carpets. Worse, but still in the home, termites or white ants eat wood, the wood of your house. If they are not stopped, they can eventually destroy the whole building. Usually they seriously damage a building before anyone even notices them. So, as we all know, insects can be a real trouble. So, what to do? You can go ahead and start killing harmful insects. In the early decades after the Communist Revolution in China, Chairman Mao encouraged the people to swat every fly they could see. Slogans on the walls of buildings called them little capitalists. But flies reproduce too quickly for this to be a long-term solution. For some decades in the West, to kill insects with chemicals seemed a good remedy. Unfortunately, chemicals can only be used in a limited area for a limited time. It's a small-scale solution. The insects come back. Worse still, some of the poisons used, like DDT, were found harmful to the environment. Many kinds of wildlife, like hawks, were harmed. And people in chemical-using rural areas have one of the highest rates of liver cancer in the world. It's no secret that chemicals remain harmful to humans. Like all species, insects adapt to their changing environments at an amazing rate. When a new chemical is introduced to their habitat, the insects that survive are generally the ones with some way of resisting the harmful effects. They then breed with the other survivors, and just like that, insects become resistant to most poison in a few generations. An insect generation, remember, is a couple of months at most. So again, we have to ask, what to do? Well, there are biological solutions. Some of these are pretty simple. One is destroying the insect's habitat. You take away their home or food. Cleaning your kitchen is the best way to prevent roaches. No garbage, no food. Getting rid of marshes and swamps eliminates mosquitoes. Other solutions might include bringing in dragonflies or bats in areas where mosquitoes are many. This is a cheaper alternative to chemicals. Biological methods like this also bring no extra pollution to the environment. But you have to be careful. If you change the environment too much, you might be hurting other forms of life accidentally. One recent method of controlling insect populations involves interrupting their breeding cycle. What does that mean? It means birth control for bugs. Insects are provided with food that makes them unable to reproduce. Since they can't have babies, the population disappears, or nearly so. And since no young are born, resistance is not a problem, with no young insects developing increased resistance. Interrupt the life cycle, eliminate the bug. It's clear that we must have an understanding of the life cycle of the insect. At least, that's the plan. We'll go into more detail as the course goes along. Now, I will stop here to see whether you have any questions or not.
That is the end of section 4. You now have half a minute to check your answers. That is the end of the listening test. In the IELTS test, you will now have 10 minutes to transfer your answers to an answer sheet.